Hi and welcome back to my channel. Spring is here and I'm making a rose fairy dress. I did somewhat follow Temperate Sage's video on how to make the skirt for this dress. So if you want to check out her video, I will leave it linked below. With any costume I make a pattern using plastic wrap and masking tape. And then I draw the design on the masking tape with my seams. In Temperate Sage's video, she does say time is a big issue. This dress alone without the wire took me about a week to create. And here I'm cutting the bodice pattern out. It does consist of about 6 pieces. And once the pattern is made, I make a mock-up and then I work out all the kinks and alterations. As you can see on this pattern, it is a halter top bodice. However, I did end up changing a little bit of it. The straps are not connected to the bodice, they are a separate piece now. Now it's time to connect those pieces according to my pattern. The actual bodice does consist of 3 layers of fabric. Normally in an adult version I would put boning, however since it's for a 7-year-old I chose not to use boning, but I did put a layer of canvas in between the 2 pieces of green. And once the alterations are done and fixed, I take the mock-up apart and I use it as my pattern for the real fabric. And the real pattern consists of 2 layers of this green and 1 layer of canvas. Now it's time to put the pieces of the bodices together. I did one full bodice at a time. My original plan was to cut bias tape from the actual fabric I used for the bodice so it matched, and edge all the raw edges of it, but later on I did choose to change it because I did not like the way it looked. But here I'm cutting out bias tape because I did use a little bit at the bottom of the bodice. And here I am putting together those strips that are going to be the bias tape. I cut a 3-inch wide strip of fabric from the green on the bias, and I will be folding it in half and then folding it in half again on each side. And since this is going to be a halter top, I did cut another strip of fabric that was 3 inches wide and folded it in half to make the straps for the halter. And here I'm just ironing that in half so I can sew it down. Now it's time to sew those strips together to make the bias tape. And since I was there, I decided to go ahead and sew the edge of the strap down. Now it took some doing, but I was able to turn this strap inside out. Once those straps were flipped, I went ahead and ironed them again to get a nice flat strap. And once the bias tape was already connected together, I cut off the excess fabric, and then here I am ironing it in half, and then I will iron again and make those each side into halves. And then still at the iron, I went ahead and ironed those seams flat. I did iron them towards the center of the bodice. Now it's time to put the 3 layers of the bodice together. The original plan was to put the 2 layers of green on the outside and the canvas in the middle, sew it up, and then put bias tape all the way around the outside. However, since I did not like that, I did change it later on. Here I'm just making sure all the seams match up together. When I did sew this bodice, I did start in the middle of the sweetheart neckline and sewed one half of it and then turned around and then sewed the other half. And now I'm cutting most of that seam allowance away. And I did sew it on the bottom too, the same way I did the top. Now here's where I added the bias tape to all the edging, but like I said, I did change that later. And once that's all done, I did press 7 grommets into each side of the back, and I'm stringing a ribbon through it. This looks like it's a wide opening in the back. It really isn't. My daughter is much skinnier than this mannequin. You will see later on at the end of the video that both sides come together on her. And here it is before I change it and unpick everything and take the bias tape off. Once it was unpicked, I did right sides to right sides with a layer of canvas, and I sewed those together on the top, and then I flipped it over. And then once that's done, I went ahead and I put the bias tape just on the bottom. And once the top part is sewn together, I clipped the corners and I clipped the curves and then flipped it over. I did sandwich the straps for the halter in between these layers as well. And once it's flipped over, I did go ahead and top stitch it just to get everything to lay flat. I also did redo the 14 grommets in the back as well. See, looks much better, much cleaner. Now the more time-consuming of the entire project, the skirt. Much like Temperate Sage's, I did go ahead and make the base skirt just like she did. I made everything exactly like she did, except my pattern for the petals and the leaves are different, and I did not add wire to them. First, I go ahead and I cut out 2 layers for the waistband, and then I cut out 10 of these, I'd say trapezoid, these odd rectangle pieces. And much like she did, I went ahead and I divided my daughter's waistband length and divided it by like 5. Once those pieces are cut out, I go ahead and I start making my leaves. I did not really divide these by 5 so much. I did just make a whole bunch of them in many different shapes and sizes. With the 2 layers for the waistband, I sewed those along the top and then gave them a good press, and then I folded the edges that are going to be connecting those weird rectangle shapes up. And then I went ahead and connected the rectangle shapes together. I did do this part wrong, however, it still worked out in the end. And here's where I realized that I messed up. Anyways, I connected the sewn together rectangle pieces to make kind of like a curved skirt. Once those 5 pieces were connected, I went ahead and attached them to the waistband. Here I'm just making sure after all the sewing that my waist is still the same length that I need it at. And the raw edges, I just tucked those in and top stitched everything down. The skirt is held on by hooks and eyes. Temperate Sage did use grommets and a ribbon. Now it's time for the petals. Much like the leaves, I just cut out a whole bunch of various sizes of the petal-shaped pieces. I think I cut out 16, but I only used 15 of them. And I did make some petals out of this mesh, the soft mesh, for an underskirt so my daughter's legs wouldn't get scratched up by the petals after I Mod Podge everything. And once all the petals and leaves are all cut out, I did serge every edge of each item because this fabric does fray. And once all that's done, it is time to treat the petals and the leaves. Much like Temperate Sage's video, I did use paint. However, I did not use fabric paint, but I used my fabric medium mixed in with my acrylics, and I gave it a wash of colors. The smaller, flatter part is the darker color, the middle is a medium color, and then the lightest color is on the edges of the petal. And I did that to both the petals and the leaves, the bodice and the underskirt. Once the petals and leaves were dry, I did put it in a mixture of Mod Podge and water and let that dry as well. And now it's time to attach those petals to the skirt. As you can see, I already have the red mesh underneath, and then I am just pinning on petals where I want them. I am overlapping some of the edges on them, and then later on I will take them off and sew them all on. Also, you can see that the back petals, they overlap the bodice They will actually be underneath the bodice once everything is worn, and I did put hooks and eyes on those edges just to keep the skirt fully closed. And here's the skirt before I sew it all on. And adding some rose details and a rose hair piece, here is the final dress. Mine is not posable like Temperate Sage's, but that's okay because with the Mod Podge it makes the petals stiff enough that I actually can fold it up. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next week. Bye!